Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is an author, a teacher, a podcast host, and a martial artist who started his martial arts journey at the age of 11. In 1969, he founded his own style, Wun Hop Keun Do, a style of Kajukenbo that incorporates Chinese and Filipino martial arts into traditional Kajukenbo. He's won over 200 championships and appeared on just as many martial arts covers. He was inducted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame in 1977 as Instructor of the Year and again in 1992 by Inside Kung Fu magazine. Over the years, he's appeared in numerous U.S. television programs and media presentations like the Merv Griffin Show and CNN, and in 1975 was invited to appear on ABC's Wide World of Sports and gave a breathtaking demonstration. He was a featured member of the USA martial arts team sent to China as a goodwill exchange, and this event became an award-winning documentary titled China's Living Legends. I could definitely go on, but I want to hear from the legend himself. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Dacascos. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thank you for that intro.
Well, hey, like I said, I could have went on and on, man. You've led quite the life, and I'm super excited to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Awesome. Here we go.
So what we like to do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very, very beginning. I mentioned you started at the age of 11. I want to know what led to that. Kind of where did that first interest, that first spark come from that kicked off your martial arts journey?
Well, you could say that maybe 11 years old when I took that walk, but it started many years earlier.
Okay.
And I lived in a place called Camp 7, which was a little camp on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. And it was pretty much made up of immigrants coming in from Asia. Like, for instance, our Camp 7 was with the Filipino group that came out of Cebu. You know, this is where my grandfather came from.
Okay.
And then they had like another one, like Camp 5 was the Japanese group, and Camp 2, I guess, was a Chinese group. And they had so many different groups, and they were all plantation workers at that particular time.
Okay.
And my interest in the martial arts came just by watching my grandpa practice the Filipino fighting Filipino martial arts in the morning, prior to going to work. They were gathered at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and they would do about an hour training and using the machetes to train with, because the machetes were the ones that they were using to cut the sugar cane with.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hear this click, clack, click, clack, click, clack inside the center of the sort of like a parking lot, and then off to work they went. Wow. And I would watch that. They would just kind of stay in my head on what was happening, and the influence, actually started that way. I didn't know what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea, but just saw that in there, and it wasn't like, you were made to do it. It was almost part of our culture. And, the Filipinos is a knife culture, kind of inheritance,
Okay.
And so that's where it started. And that must have been maybe 4 or 5 years old, watching all this in here
Wow.
and getting involved with that, and picking up a stick and learning how to work with knives. And it wasn't probably till about 8, 10, 11 years old is when got into, other martial arts, getting involved with judo, and from there, jiu-jitsu, and there it went. It just was in there, when I got up to moving from the island of Kauai to Oahu, everybody was doing this in there. The Japanese were practicing their judo, jiu-jitsu, and the Chinese guys were practicing their, kung fu, and the Filipinos were practicing, what we were doing. And it was just that it was your culture. So you wouldn't say, oh, are you studying this or are you studying that? You just did it like guys were outside, like in Europe. They just play soccer. It's just part of their habit. Or up on the mainland, playing baseball or football. Well, then here in Hawaii, doing this kind of martial arts, it was part of you. You couldn't separate it. And whether you knew you were doing it or not, it was just that. I mean, we were taught at a young age because, this is where your discipline started to kick in, learn the self-respect and for others. And you were already beginning that sort of bushido within the martial arts, so to speak, at a young age. Of course, it depends on what culture or what section of the Filipino fighting arts, because the Filipino fighting arts is so vast. As you got your system that is like called panatukan or pangamot, which deals with the dirty fighting or dirty boxing, which means that, it looked like boxing, but the way they would use the knees and the elbows and the eye shots and things that way. That's why they call it dirty boxing. Yeah. There was no clean things about it. Matter of fact, a lot of the Filipinos that ended up in Hawaii that were champions had the background of the Filipino fighting arts in regular American boxing. They had the footwork to know how to move and everything, and they were really good fighters. So there's where a lot of good top Filipino boxing in American boxing became famous because they really had the light footwork and knew how to use the elbows and use the elbows for blocking into normal American boxing before they became champions in like featherweight and lightweight divisions.
Wow.
Yep.
Then at around age 11, what was the first actual school you attended? What style was that?
It was jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, I stayed that one there for a while. It was, like a lot of people would say, judo, jiu-jitsu. Well, yeah, that's what it was, because we had to go to judo and jiu-jitsu, and learning that in there was pretty much. Well, that one was in my later years. The early years, when I was up in 11 years old, It was more so boxing.
Okay.
The boxing and things that way, and then getting into the judo jiu-jitsu at a later year. So you're talking about going back. Oh Jesus, was it 70-something years?
Wow.
It's a long time trying to think. Of that. I mean, in September. This coming September, I'm going to be turning 82 years old.
Wow.
So, when you tell me about what that, I have to think back. I says, man, I'm a freaking old fart, man. Going for that back, trying to put it into perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're still living the life at a young 82. That's impressive, though.
Well, yes, there's been a lot of issues that came up during that time because you get old. You after 60 years old, you started getting this physical issues and health issues that you start thinking, man, where did it come from? I remember when I was 25 years old and was really heavy into competition. I would think, I said, man, I hope I make it to 35 years old. And when you make it to 35, you go to 45, and then you get to 55, and you say, damn it, I'm still around. Because the reason why, because my father, only lived to 50 years old. And a lot of the men within that side of the family, all of them never passed 50 years old. They died at 42, 48, or really 45. None of them went over 50 years old. So when I came 49 years old, I was in panic, because I says, man, I made it this long. Maybe 50, I would make it, And I went to my uncle who was only about a year or 2 years older than me, from my father's side. And I told him, how come the family is dying? All the men are dying, who were young and dying that young. He says, they all grew up in the 1920s, and this is what jazz and nightclub and the boogie woogie was going on. And being that my family were musicians, that means they were partying all night and drinking and womenizing and everything else that way. So naturally, during those times with that much alcohol in you're not going to live that long. Matter of fact,
That's true.
my father died of yellow jaundice, which is cancer of the liver.
Wow.
And it actually started because he was a heavy drinker. He was a musician and things that way. So and I don't drink that, things that way. And I don't smoke or I don't get into any kind of drugs or anything. And it was a good thing that it happened. Matter of fact, at 11 years old is when my uncle caught me smoking a cigarette, in a bathroom, And I was young. I was just trying it.
Yep.
And he said, he told me, you like it? I said, yeah, man, it's good. He said, now eat it. So he made me eat it. And from that point on, I got so sick. That was it. I never touched cigarette and a lesson learned. You see what I mean? So
that's funny.
So, Yeah, well, that I think was good. I mean, it's a good habit. And
Yeah.
even my son Mark, I told him, "Do you ever try smoking cigarette or anything? I'm gonna let you eat it." And then, but he learned his lesson. No, none after that. You see.
That's fun. I had a similar one when I was about 10. Me and my friend were going to smoke our first cigarette. My friend, stole one from his mom, and he's like, I get to go first because it's my mom's cigarette. And he took 2 big puffs and threw up all over the grass. I'm like, I'm not even trying it. So I got lucky.
Lesson,
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
We learn. You mentioned competition. How did that start? Like, what age do you remember, some of your first competitions in martial arts?
Yeah, basically it was in judo, jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't remember that much of it, because I wasn't really interested in learning judo, jiu-jitsu. I was actually forced into it,
Oh.
because my dad, because I was first going to a school called Lick Elementary School, and we live in an area here on this island of Oahu. And there's an area this is called Kalihi Valley. Kalihi in Hawaii means the edge of the city. And at that time, Kalihi, which, let's put it this way, 1964-63, the population of the entire state of Hawaii, especially on this island of Oahu, was less than 300,000 people. The total was about 500,000 within the state of Hawaii. Now you're going to now, in the present time, from 1964 or 63, 64 to now, the population of the entire state is just over 1,400,000 or 1,500,000 people. So it got pretty crowded real quick. Yeah. So in those days, I was living in an area called Kalihi Valley and going to elementary high school, which is Lickilicky. And then my father decided, because I was such a brat in my young elementary years, that he decided to put me into Catholic school, and which is called St. Teresa's School. And we had to dress up, going with a white T-shirt, dark blue tie, blue pants, and black shoes. And so it was a uniform. Blue pants, white shirt, with a necktie and black shoes. And the guys that I were going from Licky to this private school kind of look at me as a snob, afterwards, and because that school in Licky was primarily had a lot of Asian. Well, yeah, it's Hawaii. There was a lot of Asians, the Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and pretty much that's how it was, the population. So going from my house to St. Teresa School, I had to pass on the same street that Licky Elementary was at. And, coming back after going to private school and coming back home, they would tease me and everything else this way. And it got so bad that, a few times it ended up into a fight. And when I ended up into a fight, you see, it was coming home pretty bloody. My mom and dad would say, what that happened? So these guys flipped me all over the ground, and these guys were, the Japanese guys that were pretty good in jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu and things this way. And so my dad says, okay, it's time for you to go learn jiu-jitsu. I said, I don't want to do that. For me, I prefer to pick up a stick and use my screamer, but also on the other hand, at that time, the Filipinos were sort of like ethnic wise would be on the bottom of the totem pole, because we were darker skinned than the others, so we had our own prejudice going on here, and so and they would always say the Filipinos would say, oh, pok 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 pok, they call it pok pok, which means they say pok pok, you always pick up a knife. And well, it was the Filipinos culture, we were knife fighters, so they would always tease us, oh, you guys cannot fight fairly, you always got to pick up a knife, and that's it, so I would get into trouble, and I remember fighting a couple of times and coming home bleeding and bloody nose and crying and everything. So my dad said, "Okay, it's time you go." So he signed me up to a guy that was called Roboman Higami, in what we call the YBA, which was called the Young Buddhist Association.
Okay.
the teacher was Japanese and actually, and so I learned it, and after a while I got pretty good at it, and I could do my throws and know my different versions of Shimen no Kata or Nage no Kata, which is the type of forms they were doing, or locks and holds and throws, and then I got good at that, and then I ran into my neighbor who was also teaching judo jujitsu. His father's name I can't remember. We used to just call him Master Chong, you know.
Hmm.
But and they were living in the back of back of where we lived in Kalihi. And when I would practice my judo in the backyard and everything, you know, the son, which was good in kung fu, would say, "That's okay. You know, we got something better." And so I figured, all right, I'm going to fill this guy up. So I went over there to try to touch or grapple. And, you know, being grappling is, you got to have that hand contact on. And well, with his kung fu, he didn't, you know, was work from a different range distance. So he would kick and punch and I couldn't get to him, you know. So after getting taught a lesson, I decided, okay, I want to learn what you guys are teaching. So I decided he was going to teach. And his father, you know, Mr. Chong also said, I'm going to teach you guys, but you have to learn my style of how we get into it. Come to find out, I went from judo, jiu-jitsu to another school because the father, as well as he was a kung fu teacher, he was also a judo, jiu-jitsu teacher. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went from one judo jiu-jitsu teacher to the other judo jiu-jitsu teacher. And when I learned the beginning part of his program, then he would teach me, you know, his style of kung fu, which was 25 style of kung fu.
Okay.
And then from that point on, it was okay. You know, as I began to learn, and they didn't do that much sparring. It was pretty much, you know, forms and their type of self-defense. And it was usually what, you know, one step type of, you know, like what Taekwondo do, you know, it's like a one step type of doing it. And for me, it was okay. It got me going and I kept that up all the way until I was in high school. And in my junior year, or maybe I must have been in my sophomore year, I met a guy by the name of Richard Whaley. You know, he
Hmm.
and I became good friends. And the only reason why I met him in my junior year is because although I was good with judo, jiu-jitsu, and my Filipino fighting arts, you know, he was studied an art called Tiken Jutsukai, which is an offshoot of Kyokushinkai. Yeah.
Hmm.
Here in Hawaii. So in that time, you know, I was doing ROTC. I was going into the Reserve Officers Training Corps, ROTC here in Hawaii, in Farrington High School. And I met him there, and I was okay with my kung fu and judo jiu-jitsu, but now I was interested on what he was doing because his form of martial arts, Tiken Jutsukai, I never saw it before, you know.
Right.
So I just wanted to learn it. So I began to say, you know, he would come over and we would work out in our lanai or backyard. And when we would do that in there, this is how I got involved in elevating up into Kempo Karate and into Kajukenbo and then going on.
Hmm.
Well, needless to say, which is that my mom was also a dressmaker. And one of her friends, you know, wanted to have her dress fixed up. So she bought her boyfriend, which was a guy by the name Sid Asunchin, who later became my instructor. So
Okay.
they were there, they were in the front where my mom's shop were, you know, and where she was making and fixing the dress and everything for this client. And this guy could hearing us KI and making a lot of noise in the back. So he came and he watched, you know, what we were doing. You see, and Richard Willie and I was practicing, you know, our self-defense and things this way. And, you know, we kind of looked at him. You know, he was about 10 years older than I. I'm 15 years older than us. And he was already an instructor. So he kind of watched and, you know, without a beat, he said, hey, that's not going to work. And we kind of look at him and he says, what do you mean it's not going to work? He says, it's not realistic enough, you know. So when, you know, we look at his knuckles, at that days, these guys used to have their knuckles. I mean, it was so black. It was like they've been walking on their knuckles. And it was just really strong looking, you know. And we already knew that he knew something. So we asked him, well, why is it going to work and everything? So he showed us a little bit of things this way. And then that point on, I said, man, I got to learn what he's doing and teaching. So Richard Whaley, he was a blue belt in Tiken Jutsukai, and we were the same age, you know. So I figured, well, I got to sort of learn from a guy that's been there, done that, you know. So it was during the week. When we saw him, it was on a Saturday. That's when he brought his girlfriend over, and then comes Monday, Tuesday. You know, he invited me to come and watch. So he came and he picked me up, matter of fact, and I went and I watched his class and I said, man, I got to join. I got to do this in here, you see. So I started with him in that class. And by the time I got up to my first rank, which was at that time, white, purple, I was already beat up and I was on the verge of quitting. And says, man, this thing is so freaking hard. It's just that everybody's bleeding and bruising and everything. So I decided I was going to quit. I think I had enough beating up. And those days, there were no safety equipment.
Right.
There was no cups, no nothing, So one day, he came to my house and, to come pick me up. And I told my sister, tell him I'm not here, She went in, so I'll tell him that, Al said to tell you that he's not here, but he's actually hiding in the closet. my sister. So he came inside, found me in the closet, and he dragged me out. And from that point, I said, I'm glad he did, though, because, had he just gone, then I probably wouldn't have been in the martial arts, But he dragged me out. And there, from that point on, he said, next time you do that, I'm going to send Delacruz, his assistant instructor, to come get me. And I was so fearful of Delacruz because he was a brown belt and was awesome fighter, And matter of fact, we became lifelong friends. So, we've been together now. Because he's the same age as me,
Okay.
Well, actually, 1 year older. He's 82. And, and we're still friends to this day. But anyway, he was the one that kept me and inspired. And I never stopped. And then when we became black belts, I became black belt. He was no longer there. He decided that he was going to go under my instructor, Cedar Sunsen's instructor, which was we call him Sijo. Sijo means creator of the art.
Mm-hmm.
We call him Sijo, Adriano Emperado. So I said, well, if he got that good, then I want to go to the one that was better than him. So I decided to go to train with Emperado because El De La Cruz also went and left Cedar Sunshine to go with Adriano Emperado. So we went there and, I began to learn things. But the problem is that after about 6 months or so, I was really disappointed. But I stayed with him, And the reason why I was disappointed was that I was trying to get better learning from Adriano Emperado because he was actually the teacher of Cedar Sunshine. But the point is, I couldn't learn anything more because Cedar Sunshine had taught me everything on the physical level, how to be snappy, how to be powerful, how to do anything. Mm-hmm. So going over to the other instructor, I had already learned that. But what he did teach me, on the other hand, was just that how to be more philosophical and have more the mind into it and the spirit into it. Because, we have the philosophy of your mind, body, spirit, right? So, your body's only going to do what your mind does, and your mind is only going to work if you have the strong spirit, So, trying to understand how that works, I said, okay, that makes sense. So what I learned in sitting down with Emperado, talking to me for 1 hour, was like training for 10 hours physically. Wow. Because of all the knowledge I was getting. So what I lacked on the mental and spiritual level that wasn't really emphasized with Sid, because Sid was a street fighter and he was more into the physical part. Mm-hmm. I learned from Emperado. And eventually when you kind of take a look at it, it's life. As a young boy, you learn everything physical. You want to do this and do that. As you begin to get older, the failures that you have turn into success because you don't stop trying. So, and to me, it was just that getting more into learning what the mind was and how it affected your spirit. And then it goes into a circle again, and the spirit then forces the body to go into the mind and go into the body, and the mind spirit goes into the circle again, and body, mind, spirit, and all that. And you can still reverse and go counterclockwise and still learn the process, but you're learning that there. But after a while, when I got into teaching, there was another element that I figured that, when you talk about the mind and body spirit, this Asian way of thinking, mm-hmm. But when you work, you think of the Occidental way of thinking, then it becomes, mind, body, spirit, financial, because, and because if your finances aren't there, your spirit is going down, your mind is going to be weak, and your body said, oh shit, man, I don't want to do this. I got to work now. You see, so in other words, if you were to have the mind, body, spirit as a three-legged stool, and that's all you had to depend on, because, in Asia, you're not talking too much commercialism when think this way. You can do that. When you get into America, and it's a capitalistic, then something's got to happen with you. You got to have the finances to support that. And if you don't have that to support that, then your spirit is going to go down. And then the four-legged stool, is not balanced anymore. It's not equal. So it's lopsided. You kind of get what I'm getting at.
Yeah, definitely.
And anything that you want to do in your hobby, it's your hobby, you got your mind, body, spirit into it. But if you don't have the finances to do it, or to continue on, then it kind of lopsided, and it's everything. Then it becomes not the way that you have it, not like you're doing it 100% anymore, because you got to think of so many entities. Anyway, that's a different philosophy we're going on to. You see,
So you mentioned teaching. What led you down the teaching path? What made you interested in teaching others martial arts?
Well, when I first had my small club, we were teaching at a place called Ala Moana Beach, and I had about 4 to 7 people there where I was teaching, and I wasn't interested in that time, although I was already a black belt, as under the Emperor and Cedar Sunshine. I had my own group there. I was teaching. I was teaching for the heck of just young age, and that time very arrogant and cocky, because you get into a lot of fights. You're not even 21 years old, and by the time that you're between 18 and 21, you're at high testosterone level.
Right.
Everything is either going to be fighting or women or drinking or things, or getting into trouble. And so when I was teaching that one, that's what the attitude. My teacher would tell me that if somebody taps you on the shoulder, drop him. I said, why? He said, then you never know who's in the back of you. And I said, what if it's my uncle? He said, well, you apologize later, not now. So it was like the attitude was just that it was totally on self-defense. My attitude from that time to now, I don't teach self-defense anymore. I teach self-survival, and to me, self-survival is totally different from self-defense, because I'm not looking at just self-defense in the physical part. I'm looking at self-survival covering different subjects within the whole entity of surviving, especially in the world as it goes through now, So that's a different total subject anyway.
Yeah.
And as far as getting into teaching, that's how I actually get started. And from then, when I was teaching at the park, and by the time I was ready to move to the mainland, I moved to the mainland when I was 21 years old, or just going on 22. And 21, no. No, I moved to the mainland when I was 23 years old. My son Mark was born when I was 21. So I had Mark for about 1.5 years, 2 years before we moved from Hawaii to California. And when I got into California, because I had people that I went to high school with, this guy by the name of Melvin Obero and another guy, they invited me to, move to California. And the reason why I moved to California, one was just that I needed to get away from Hawaii at that time. And this is, I say, we had 300,000 people, and it was kind of small. So I wanted to get away. And he invited me to go to California. He lived in Hayward, California. And I remember moving there in March, January, February, March. Oh, yeah, just about in March. But the beginning part of March or February, or the ending part of February, which was still winter, And I didn't realize that to me, but when I got there and got off the plane, when I saw that smoke or steam coming out of my nose, man, it was cold. It was cold, And it was like, man, maybe I made the wrong move moving to the mainland. I moved in with my brother, which was in a place in Daly City, Northern California, and my friend Melvin Obero lived in Hayward, California, and this is where I needed to move to because I was looking for a job. Also, my wife and Mark wasn't there yet. I was there. I went there about a month ahead to plan get things ready. So, looking for a job, and he told me, he wanted to learn, what I was teaching, So when we got together, moving from Daly City, which was across from Hayward, California, on the other side of the San Francisco Bay. I started to teach a class in a garage, which started out with 10 people, but it was small. You had a 2-car garage, 10 people moving around with using your critical distance line. You don't have enough room.
Right.
So eventually we moved into a place called Carolyn Hall, which was a dance hall studio. And we used that place for a couple of years. And matter of fact, it was about a year and a half from the 10 people we had in the 2-car garage, ended up being over 20-something people in the Sheridan Hall. And then it began to get bigger. And I said, I can't stay in this place. And then I went into a place in San Leandro, California, and got a storefront studio. And that's where I began to start growing, because people could see what I had. But my title of the school was called School of Chinese Kempo Kung Fu. Now, that time, you're talking about there in the early, or like say 1966 or around that time,
Okay.
a lot of people didn't know what it was, and a lot of most of the people thought it was the School of Chinese Kempo Kung Fu. They thought it was the School of Chinese Cooking, so they would come inside and looking for a teacher that would teach them how to be a Chinese chef. And this and this, and I wasn't that guy, And that's matter of fact, that's how I met Mary Lou. Mary Lou eventually became my wife, and her name is Malia. Dacascos. So that's how she came inside, because she was looking for a martial arts school, but she saw Chinese Kempo Kung Fu, and she said, well, what better way to do it is to go inside and look for the chef, and maybe the chef can guide us to where school was. And I told him, I'm a teacher, but not the cook, So anyway, that's how, and that's how we grew in California and started teaching. Now you go from, as far as teaching and competing, it was like that. Now you're talking about the 1960s. Now the United States were involved with Cambodia and the Vietnam War, and some of my students were at the age where they were getting drafted, and had to enlist or whatever. So, and they were good students. They were fighters. I didn't have any more people fighting for me, So this is when Malia at that time says, well, you don't have anybody representing you. Why don't you go ahead and fight? I say, I'm not interested in competition, but after a few months, he kept on egging me on, and I decided, okay, I'm going to do it, So one of the first tournaments I entered was in the Bay Area, and there were a lot of Kajukenbo practitioners and everything. So I competed, and I ended up winning the grand champion.
Nice.
And I said, well, it's not too bad, So I said, yeah, that's what I didn't want to do it. So she says, well, there's another tournament in South Bay, which was in Los Angeles area. And I said, okay, that's good. If I lose, then nobody would know up in the north, So I went down there and I fought. And that tournament changed my fighting style altogether. Really? It changed it, because I was, if you know that when you get into Kung Fu, we usually fight from the catch stance or the hands high, like open-handed, palms open, and then as an example, you would have the right hand way out, and the left hand would be right under my right elbow. And doing this in here, this is how I came out. And the first guy I fought, he was from Dangsudo, and he came inside with a side kick, faster than I could try to block him, and hit me right in the ribs, my right ribs. Flew me all over the judge's desk. When I came out of that today, I said, I don't think that pose is going to work, because I left him an opening, and I wasn't fast enough to do that. But using my right hand is the same way, leading, my left hand is the same way leading out. All I did was drop my right hand instead of keeping it high, just let it hang loose. So that hand would just totally protect my right side, and using my left hand to protect from my right shoulder up to my face, and using my right elbow and my left elbow to close anything that would come inside, just like an elevator door. I would do this. From that point on, I stayed that way, and it's the way that my fighting style became. To people would watch, wow, this is the way he fought, and started winning championships because I didn't have my students anymore. But I was developing new group of students that were coming up. but they were now more inspired because I would never teach them anything that didn't work for me. You see, so if it worked for me, I said, okay, I'm gonna teach them that, and this is how my fighters became good. Now, in those days, most people were fighting with left lead forward, and I made sure that my stance was fighting with right lead forward.
Oh.
So that was way quicker because going on a right lead forward, since that the techniques I was doing was stronger. I could, like say, as an example, if you were a fighter, and I fought a lot of, Korean stylists. They would, at that particular time, they would come inside with the left lead forward. And then they would, if they were to do their kicks, then they would come from the back right leg, pivot into the roundhouse and get into a side kick, whatever. You feel me? But then that I was already in that right foot forward, that the minute that right foot came off the ground, my right foot would just come inside and stop them before the kick would come into me. So in other words, I cut the distance by short circuit, half the distance, you see. And I concentrated on that until they got so powerful that when I was in the right lead, that the minute I saw the hips move, all I would do was pivot my left leg and twist my hips, and then I would stop them in midway, into with my side kick, or that because I was in my right lead forward with my hands down, they were constantly watching my left hand. Where I would move my left hand, my right hand wouldn't be moving as much. So that would be a distraction. Then the minute they move, then my right hand would go into with a back fist into the head, and I would follow up with a left punch and then go into my kicking technique. I always do things in three combinations. I have in my fighting system the 5 primary weapons that I use. And always from those 5 primary weapons that I use, they were set to different combinations. And the reason what I would use only 3 basic techniques, because these are the 3 ones that's going to end the fight anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I use it in different combinations. One was short range, one was middle range, and one was long range. On how I do it, and I could combine it different ways depending on how the person would come out. I would usually take maybe 2-3 seconds and watch the way they stand, move around, and then I could anticipate whether this guy was a right lead fighter or left lead fighter, or whether his strong points was because just the way that he moved his shoulders and hips, as it became coming up the line. And that's where I started to gauge things on the particular way of fighting. So that's pretty much using technical fighting principles.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cool. So at what point then did you start getting in your mind that you were thinking of creating your own system? Kind of what led to that?
Well, it's unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I had many great instructors, and many of these guys were really good in fighting. And they would say, this, make sure that when you go inside, you tell them that, this, you're studying this style. And I said, well, in my mind, I said, I couldn't do that because I had a lot of good instructors. That means if I will go inside of me and tell people, well, I'm representing this style, this style, this style, this is my instructor, this style, then I would be up over there spending 2-3 minutes introducing who I am and what I'm doing before I even got to fight.
Yeah.
So I said, that's not cool. So when you begin to start looking at it and you take it structurally, you take a look that you learn a style. You learn a system. The way I look at it, just thinking it. You learn the system, you learn the style, you go from system, style, method, expression in that order. So in other words, I was learning the Kajukenbo system, and the method I was teaching was the Emperor method. Right? You got that so far,
mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And the style I was teaching at that time, other that one there, became the way that I felt there was me, my style, Dacascos, right?
Mm-hmm.
But by the time it got to you, it ended up being your expression. You see?
Yep.
So the expression doesn't look like the true style of the method or the style anymore. It goes from system, style, method, expression. And when you take a look at it that way, you're never going to look like your instructor,
Right.
Because, my dad told me, listen here, and I always say it in my head, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So I think, okay, if not what I do, it's how I do it, then how I did it was my expression, not my expression of what I felt from all this combination of instructors. So when I put the word together, Wun Hop Keun Do, Wun Hop Keun Do means combined fist art. but it's also the Chinese translation of Kajukenbo, which is also mean combined fist art. But the word Kajukenbo, which is, karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, kenpo, boxing, this way, it was a Hawaiian version of the fighting arts put together by Emperor. That was his version. That means he became his system. Yeah. And that was based more on the Kempo style of Okinawa, Okinawan style Kempo with the background coming up from. But that again too, you see, was that I wasn't practicing the Okinawan style of Kempo. I had more influence on the Chinese way of doing it. So, we get really technical here. It's kind of screwed up.
Yeah.
And you get the word Chuanfa. Chuanfa means Kempo anyway. Where does Kempo come from? It came from Okinawa by way of the Chinese merchants. So therefore, it was actually Kung Fu. So therefore, I use the word Wun Hop Keun Do, in reference to giving acknowledgement and respect back to my original art with Kajukenbo. So, this is why I say, we get into the word Wun Hop Keun Do. It's actually another translation of Kajukenbo, which is combined fist arts. I couldn't say that I was a kicker or a puncher or weapons man. I covered different levels of fighting. It wasn't strictly a kick and punch or grappling art.
Right.
The way you're going to fight is the way out in the street. As a matter of fact, when you get into the street, you watch somebody fighting, you're going to have different perspectives. You got a taekwondo guy who can say, "Oh, you see the guy, you seen the kick? He did a taekwondo kick, And another guy can say, no, there was a kempo kick. Well, what the hell? When you're trying to kick in a fight, you're not calling what style you come from. You just do it, So the thing is just that it's so natural, if styles or cultures or nationalities wants to claim that it's their style. Well, yeah, it is. Not because if a guy from Okinawa never knew a guy from Korea, and when they're doing a sidekick, the sidekick is a sidekick. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. But the end result, this is a sidekick where it's going to go into the target. So the delivery system is going to be different. Like as an example, when you do a taekwondo sidekick or anything, you usually have a 4 count, knee going up, thrusting up, pulling back, and coming down. Well, on the Chinese version, you have one way. It's a slide in. It goes from, instead of doing this, it goes from the floor straight to the target. You don't cock. It just goes right under him. Yeah. Okay. And the reason for that is because of the position of the opponent on how he's holding his hands. So if you go up into, 1, 2, 3, 4, by the time you get it to 1 where your knees are up and you shoot straight, then the chances are that, you're going to be hitting his elbow on that way. But on the Chinese version, if you go from the floor to the ribs, you have to take a look at point of view. The point of view is this in here. If you were to stand straight, eye to eye, looking at a guy, and I'm looking at you eye to eye at a guy, and you're standing in your stance, what my eyes see is I see the elbow first before I get into the ribs, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, suppose you were to put your eyeball on your toes at the bottom, and you're looking upwards. When your toes look upwards, you don't see the elbow, you see the ribs. And that's where it's going. So now it's a different point of view of attacking.
Okay.
Can you visualize what I'm talking about? Going straight in. Going straight in, and I don't pull my leg going up into the cock straight out and pull back. No. From there, I just go boom, right inside, straight line up there. So it's a different angle of attack. Instead of going one extra move where I go up and I kick, I go one line, straight line. There's no cocking. Yeah. So it's a different way of doing it. Like some people, as an example, the Kempo style does this a lot of times. They stand in a fighting stance, and by the time that they're attacking, what their body will do is the body will move forward, but the back fist is still staying in the same place, and it's actually cocking backwards before the foot lands, and then it strikes out. That's the wasted movement. It's a wasted movement. You're losing it. You're going again, cocking back. Like the way that is, I teach it, it's just that we call it independent movement, and you've heard that before. It's just that when my hips begin to move, my hands actually flies first to go out there. So there's less movement. When I hit them and I pull back. So it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Right.
And that is exactly the way that I fought. Is everything that I did was coming out of technical fighting principle, by eliminating any movement that would telegraph what you were doing. Because, the thing is that by the time I'm moving, your eyes is 1/10 of a second is going to see it before it begins to register that something is coming. And I need that 1/10 of a second to strike you before you even get a chance to move.
Mm-hmm.
So just different concept again. Yeah.
Wow. Think back then to when you first decided you were going to create your own system, and all the way up to now. How much has that changed over the years? How much has your system changed over the decades?
Well, it's still evolving.
Nice.
It hasn't, I haven't stopped. I mean, it's like, this is why I don't like when people call me necessarily, senior grandmaster or grandmasters. I just prefer to go by the word Sifu. Okay. Or professor. And the reason I do that is because when you put the title of grandmaster or master, what did I master? How the hell did that? I'm still learning. Let me give you an example. A doctor, you don't see a master doctor or grandmaster doctor. What he does, he's practicing medicine. So what am I doing? I'm practicing martial arts.
Okay.
And the only way that I get better is to keep on practicing. Perfect. You say that practice makes perfect. No, it doesn't make you perfect. It makes you better,
Mm-hmm.
Because the minute you get yourself practice makes perfect, that is when you come to you set yourself as a limit. You put a limit on yourself because it's like, once I get to be, I've seen a lot of guys that they attain their first degree black belt and then they quit because that was their goal. That was it. You don't see them around anymore, and I don't do that. I tell them, I say, don't look at it that way. If you're a purple belt and you think as a purple belt, you will always be a purple belt. But you look at yourself and you look at the black belt, you think in your mind, even if you're a purple, even if you're a white belt and you want to go up to purple belt, you see what I mean? Don't think it's just purple as you're doing that in there. Go and look at the black belt and say, I am a black belt in training.
Right.
Black belt in training. So you have that attitude of always having that inside philosophy of you that you're going to get better than this one here, or where you at this present time. So the objective is to focus instead of target, what I would say, because you can see a target like your head, but my focus is going to be 12 inches in the back of your head. That is the access to where my hand is going to go. I'm not going to just go to the target, because the target is a limit. It stops you. It stops you from that point on. So you got to focus 12 inches behind.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it always does. I mean, for me, it's like this in here. And people say, well, I can't do it. I say, well, you already set yourself up for failure, because when you set yourself up for failure, it's like that. You fail when you don't try, and that's it. You fail when you stop. That's it.
Definitely. How did Mr. Empanado take it when you told him you were creating your own system? Was he supportive?
He had to be, because what I showed him was better than what he had.
Okay, nice.
And it wasn't that I had something that was better. It's just that it was a different way of doing it.
Right.
Remember, I said it's not what you do; it's how you do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when I showed him the different principles, or showed him this and here. Matter of fact, at that particular time, the Emperor style was the Kajukenbo Kempo Karate. That was it. And then he went from Kajukenbo Kempo Karate to Kajukenbo Tumpai. Now, Tumpai means central way. And at that particular time, he was getting involved with a lot of Kung Fu practitioners here in Hawaii. So he saw that at that time, in the early 1960s, Kung Fu was becoming a strong word. It was like, in the old days, it was like, you had the Kempo Karate, you have the Judo Jiu-Jitsu, and then now you had the Karate, and then Kung Fu was coming up. So Kung Fu was beginning to open up in the 60s. And so he got involved with the Chinese people here, and he was learning arts that had more of the Tai Chi, Pakwa, Sheng He, which was the internal part of the arts. So we were learning from Emperor at that time, Kajukenbo Tumpai, which now was incorporating the soft internal into the hard Kempo karate style. So we kept on learning that in it. But it was pretty much more foot-based. When I say foot-based, in other words, there wasn't kicks that high things, and like you don't see any kind of high kicks or jumping kicks in Pakwa, Sheng He, or Tai Chi. You don't see that.
Right.
You see, it's not part of the program. So when he went that in there, we learned that in there. But at that time, I was moving to California, so I said, I'm going to California now. Also, I was also learning Silampai on the Buksem Kong, which was a Hanga Silam system. in Hawaii. So when I left Hawaii, I left with what Emperor was teaching and what Buck Sam Kong has teaching me. This is where I got an influence of getting into Chinese Kung Fu. So we go into that and detonate. By the time I get to California, I was on my own. And it was like, whoa, it was different. So I was working at this place called Western Electric, and I met a guy by the name of Mel Lee, who introduced me to a guy by the name of Ron Liu, who introduced me to the San Jose Chinese Physical Cultural Association. And there I went to study Kung Fu, but it was under a guy by the name of Paul Ing and Wong Jack Man.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Wong Jack Man, if you know that name, Wong Jack Man was the guy that fought Bruce Lee.
Right.
Yeah, that time, and I didn't know that. So I went to study there, and I started learning Wong Jack Man and Paul Ing system, which is the Northern Shilum style, which has a lot of high kicks, a lot of spinning kicks, a lot of sweeps, a lot of long range techniques. It was the Northern style. Mm-hmm. So when Emperor came, I told him that, listen up, I cannot teach that Kajukenbo Tumpai anymore because this is what I've learned and I put it in. And he told me, well, show me what you got. And I showed him what I did and he was really impressed. I said, so how we can call it? We cannot call it Kajukenbo Tumpai anymore, Mm-hmm. He says, yeah, we can't, So I started to think and I said, well, why don't we just call it Kajukenbo Chuanfa? He said, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's where the Kajukenbo Chuanfa came inside. Now that became the sort of like the third system in Kajukenbo because Kajukenbo has Kajukenbo Tumpai, Kajukenbo Kempo Karate, Kajukenbo Chuanfa, and Kajukenbo Wun Hop Keun Do. You say that these are the styles under the system of Kajukenbo. So we started to practice this Chuanfa version, and it became very, very popular. And when he told me that he wanted me to teach a lot of the senior instructors in Kajukenbo Kempo Karate, which was 10 years to 15 years, these guys were older than me. They were my seniors, They were hard-headed because they were already set instructors. And these guys were more heavyweight. Here's the thing that we have. We have what we call a red book. And a red book we've got two versions of it. One is a hard copy red book. It's about a good inch thick of all the materials and everything within the Wun Hop Keun Do system. And the other one is about 3 inches thick. It's with a 3-hole binder type. Okay. And the reason why I have that in there is just that I don't really like to put anything into a book and solid form because it's not concrete. The Wun Hop Keun Do that we practice, as I say, is an expression. I teach people on how to develop the expression. And as an artist and as an instructor, a teacher teaches all the student the basic tools. Mm-hmm. And once the student knows all the basic tools, he's going to have his flavor. Like, for instance, if I were to tell you, I need you to draw me in oil painting, a beautiful woman, and I give you all the description, you're going to do it, and you're going to create the most beautiful woman you can. But when I look at it, you see, it's a beautiful woman, but it's not exactly the woman I had in my mind.
Right.
So that means you came with your own expression of it. Yeah. So what I do is just that the objective within Wun Hop Keun Do is to teach them concepts and principles, technical fighting principles that can be applied to your life. And in doing so, when you begin to be a creator, what happens is you have your own identity, the same like you have your own signature. No two signatures are the same, although you can write the word sensei or instructor, block. But by the time you get it into script, it's your own identity. It's everything is going to be your own identity. Same like you have your own voice. So when we put together a Wun Hop Keun Do coming it is, a guy, my friend Billy Liu out of Denver, Colorado, I told him that I needed an art to express myself. He said, well, what is it? And I told him, then he said, just call it Wun Hop Keun Do, combined fish art. I said, okay, fine. So what I'm teaching, the name Wun Hop Keun Do is just a name.
Right.
It's just a name. It's not a style or anything. It's an expression of yourself. But we give it system, style, method, expression so that you have something to follow. and stays. But once you learn it, you can go. And it's the same thing when you go to karate schools, kempo schools, and everything. No two schools teach alike. All the students come out different.
Right.
If the student comes out exactly looking like the instructor, it's a compliment, because duplication is always a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an identity. You don't have an identity. You have a personality. You develop a personality, but you haven't developed a character. To me, when I talk about character is you when nobody's looking. Personality is you when everybody's looking.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. I love your outlook. It's cool. I mean, that's really a good way to look at it. And like I said, I know the instructors that take that into consideration and make it more personal for the student, I think it's better for them, for everybody. I like that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
What made you decide to write your book? I haven't finished it yet. I've been reading the digital copy, and I ordered my physical copy. I'm waiting to get that also. But it's so far very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, the physical copy, the book was sent out, so you cool. should get it any moment.
Awesome.
Moment now.
I'm looking forward to it. But kind of what led to that? How long had you been thinking about it, and what finally made you decide to write that?
It's just that there's a lot of things that goes on in my life, and I was going through a really depressing part of my life where it was almost suicidal, because there's a lot of things that I've had, like that were like I thought were going to be successful, but were failures. And I've been some of the most truest people I thought that was my friend became the ones that betrayed me. And after seeing my therapist, I said, she told me that the best way to do it is to write down everything you can, because that would relieve some that tension inside of you, and then you can go back and read it and see where you went wrong and what you did right. You see, so I figured, okay, there's a lot of things I could do to it. I figured too, there's a lot of things that could be a good learning experience from people. And my son said it the best. He says, Dad, I like what you did, because it was the good and the bad and the ugly. So, the good part was that he showed me what he didn't want to do, because what that I did. And the good was that the good part he could do, so he took it from both sides, and he said, yeah, that would be the best way to put it,
Nice.
So it kind of, when you put things down and you can see it, then you can see it in black and white, as to where you think you did right, but went the other way, so you see it in front of you. If you have it on your mind, sometimes your mind kind of distort things, but when you get it in written form and you look at it, you say, wow, did it really happen to me? And then, and you talk from your soul, your spirit, you just let it out. Yep. It didn't matter. The original version that I had was over 700 pages. But my editor, they helped me with it. He said, man, you get so much good stuff over here, and what we better do is just cut it down. So I said that way. So now, we're going to finish up with the legacy number 2,
Okay.
which will be more spiritual and more philosophical, and
Nice.
put on pull all the experience down so that people can learn from it. Because like I say, you can teach people, on the physical level, but if you can put your words down into where they can visualize it, then it would have a much more stronger impact going through it. I like to say there's 2 ways of learning. And I think I say that, wise man learn by his mistakes, but a wiser man learn from the mistake of the wise man. That's what I want to do. It says that if whatever I'm doing, if I can pass my what I've learned on to somebody else, then that becomes a legacy. And that's what I want. So try to leave the legacy of what I've accomplished and how I've accomplished it, and so that they can do it better than what I do.
Yeah.
And if I can do it better than what it was, then I've improved myself.
When do you hope to have the second book out?
It's in writing right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's in writing right now. Yeah. That one is going to be detailing. I'm taking this one. My opening is going to be prevention, protection, evacuation.
Okay.
And if I use that one there as opening up, it's already a means of survival. This is why I say I don't teach self-defense anyway. I teach self-survival, which covers more too, because it covers more of what's happening today. And there's a lot of things that are happening today that I wasn't aware of, and that's like 40 years ago or 50 years ago. But when I take a look at in my life history and look back at it, I said, whoa, there's a lot of shit going on,
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
So what led you to the podcast? Who was that your idea? Was someone else say, hey, you should do this?
Which podcast?
The Beyond Kicking and Punching?
I've been thinking a lot about that. There's a couple of one we're doing. Beyond Kicking Punching is just one of it. Yeah,
Okay.
we've got another one called Roundhouse. Yeah, and Roundhouse is done with Sean Hofflinger, which is the guy that helps me with my website, and then with Ron Van Cliff. Ron Van Cliff and he and I are actually hosts. And the Roundhouse, we talk about the martial arts, or we talk about our experience working with celebrities, and how it came right back to us. And on that one there, we don't hold back. It's more the inside life of what people don't see when you're working with celebrities. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On that one. And then naturally on Beyond Kicking and Punching is, the podcast we do. We took a break for about a year, because everything went through the COVID and things that way. So
yep,
things kind of change. Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. So do you enjoy doing the podcast?
So, the thing, doing a podcast, it's good because podcast it's very informative, because what you think you knew about a person, it's not the person.
Right.
You begin to see and get into under the skin. And that's what you want to know. You see, when people say, do you know the person? Even if I know the person, I say no, because I don't know the person. I don't know what he's really thinking, everything. Whatever he thinks of me, I don't know what he thinks of me,
Right.
So, but until you get to speak and talk to him, and you can do it. I like doing the one we do, because the one we do Beyond Kicking and Punching is visual. We can actually see the person. We can see his facial. So when from that one, we can match his facial movements with the tonality of his voice. Because sometimes it can be very deceiving. You hear a voice, but you don't know if he's cocking his eyes somewhere, and then that's a different thing. Yeah, and you get over 90% of the personality or the character comes by actually watching the facial expression and body movements. That's another part when I talk about surviving, because, in a part of the self-surviving is I go through, I make people more aware of. There's a lot of ways of doing the martial arts, which is the part of prevention. And a lot of prevention when I talk about is that watch his language.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the tonality, watch his facial language, watch his body movements, is the way he dresses and things that way. That will complete his personality. Complete his character, not his personality. As I said, personality is outward look, character is inward look. Yeah. Okay. So that's why you want to know more about that. Then you get to know a little bit about the person more so. You see what I mean?
So I'm curious then, being an instructor for a lot of your life and also being a parent, obviously your kids got involved in martial arts. Now, was that something, did they have a choice or did you pretty much as soon as they could walk, you put them in martial arts?
No, it was all by, you see, we talk about the circle of influence here, and the circle of influence was really close, was within the family. So none of my kids were forced. They saw what we did.
Nice.
And they thought they thought, without being forced into it, they thought that this was culture and this was the way of life. So, everything they do, they duplicate, because the thing is, the most important part of the kid's life is between the age of 1 to 10. Or 1 to 6 years old, because they absorb that, without, whatever words come out of my mouth, they're going to repeat it. They never heard it before, just like a computer. So, whatever actions they were, that's how they learn. And every single one of them did the martial arts, and they're all good at it. Every single one of them is good at it.
Nice.
So like my daughter, Jaden, she's 22 years old. She's a beautiful girl, exotic looking, almost look like Mark, and also very good in the martial arts. But also, this is where I tell them, when you learn the martial arts, the character is most important. The most important thing is respect and showing a lot of humility and humbleness. I say, you stay out of trouble this way, you see, and don't go around bragging and showing off. I told them, don't be like me when I was young. And young, my teacher that was See the Sunshine, he never really cared about that. It was a different culture. We grew up, remember, with less than 300,000 people on this island, Oahu, and it was a very small island. So we fought a lot of times. So,
right.
Even among ourselves, so it wasn't the time to be humble. It was the time to be cocky.
That's funny. So I'm curious now, what are your thoughts on something like mixed martial arts and the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
I watch it. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
This is like you talk about MMA.
Mm-hmm.
As you know that I talk about MMA in a different sense. I don't call it a mixed martial art.
Right.
And for us, MMA is mean martial arts because we don't have rules. You
Yeah.
know, and
Yep.
if you have anywhere between 31, 36 rules, well, those 36 to 31 to 36 rules is not a rule for me. It's a weapon for me.
Okay.
So I use whatever that's why I say, instead of self-defense, it's self-survival. You do whatever it takes to stay alive.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So I'm curious, in all your years of martial arts, is there one philosophy that you've either learned while you're doing it or developed on your own that just comes to the top of your list?
Now, what you do is how you do it.
I like that.
And the other thing that I say is just that, and I say it a lot, I say, to me, martial arts is like medical insurance, something you want to have and hope that you never have to use.
I like that. I've never heard that before. That's really good. I'll have to put that on a t-shirt maybe. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah. It's coming up. It's actually coming up in my coffee company I put together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Cool.
Part of it. It's going to be, it's called, it's called Kung Fu Coffee, Dacascos Ohana.
That's awesome. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I'll have to get some for my wife. So she loves coffee.
No, I mean, that is basically, if people kind of take a look at it, they can take a look at it as being a joke or philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, the way, if you take a look at it, you really look at the word, Kung Fu Coffee, it's like you can beep this out. It says, Kung Fu fuck off.
There you go.
So guys who saw it, they caught it right away. A lot of people didn't catch it. You know what I mean? But we were doing this in here because we were doing it as a fun thing and just having fun of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you enjoy whatever you do if you're having fun.
Right.
Okay, so and there's always going to be different fun things that we do to have fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. I have a few fun questions to wrap up the interview.
Sure.
This first one, it doesn't have to be 4. I've had people give as few as 2 and as many as 8, but it's kind of up to you. Just 3, 4, 5 names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts.
You want names? Well,
yep.
If I were to say that, one of it would be my father.
Nice.
Because he was, he was very influential and very philosophical with me. Like the things he would say, like I mentioned, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And he would always start off that to be a better person, you got to show respect first to people, and then be humble and show humility. So he was. Although he whipped us when we were younger, but a lot of the whipping came with a lot of philosophy behind it to make you think about life. You only got one life, so why are you going to go out with 8? Just go out with love, So it was that. And that one there. And the other person then would be like, Jesus Christ, naturally, because I always use him as one of the way to walk, and the way he believed. And the other one, like, would be Bruce Lee for his physical attitude and strength. And because I knew him, as a person when he was alive, not like people that come up in that generation that never had any contact with him. And a lot of the things that come up with him now, some of it was distorted, but I knew what was going on, you see? So, and I respect him for the things that he did, because he did bring up a lot of things. And, although he promoted Kung Fu in a different way from me, he did get it out and therefore begin to recognize people as a martial arts. Therefore, it's not the Kung Fu that he brought out. He brought it out as a martial arts. As a matter of fact, when you talk of the word Kung Fu, you understand what the word Kung Fu means, right?
Yep.
Skill through the accumulation of hard work and time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you put a lot of hard work and time in it, it doesn't matter what style of martial arts you're doing. It's Kung Fu, because you would never get to be a good Tang Soo Do or Shotokan or whatever if you didn't put the time and sweat to get there. Same like a doctor. You can call him Kung Fu doctor because he put a lot of skill, time, and effort to get to that part he became. Yeah. So kind of misleading the word.
Yeah. All right. So do you have, now you can't pick your own, a favorite martial arts book?
I don't really have any. I look at all of them as being a source of knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah? Any book that I look at get good and bad points anyway. And when I go look into a book and I read, I say, well, that seems like it's good, but it's good for me. It may not be good for somebody else.
True.
So I look at what the person's philosophy is, and where I think his mind is going and what his attitude, because some people can be like total self-defense. In other words, they're not going to strike you unless you hurt them.
Yeah.
As far as my art is concerned, I look at that one. To me, the quickest way for self-defense is to have a real quick self-offense, technique.
Okay.
So stop him before he even begins. So I look for things that's going to be delivered and show me the quickest way. I don't want things that is too flashy, because I've seen too many, especially fighting in tournament competition and also out in the street. Guys get so flashy, they get beat. Because they're not taking it simple. They're not taking it fast and quick enough. So I think that there's a lot of damn good books on different subjects. So when you ask me that topic on, which would be my favorite, well, I got good ones in jiu-jitsu. I got good ones in eskrima. I got good ones in taekwondo or savate or things that way. So I cannot put it in one.
Okay.
They all contribute good things.
Hey, that's a good answer. All right. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Well, you got to talk about era, because I remember when Five Fingers of Death came out in the 1960s or, in the 1970s. And then before that, from there, you had the Seven Samurais that came out way then. I mean, in those areas, they were all good. If you were to put down now, you've got thousands of good martial arts movies that, that come out.
Yeah.
And I think what it is that I like martial arts movies not for the martial arts skills. I like martial arts movie if you have a good content in it, a good story.
Right.
Otherwise, all the kicking and punching is just to take up space and time. So it's not that. If you have a good reason why you're going to go kill a person, you're going to be interested. Otherwise, if you're going to have a lot of killing, why are you killing people? What's all the hatred about?
Yeah. Okay. I don't want one of my, probably in my top 5 all-time favorite martial arts movies, Only the Strong is one of my favorites. I watch it at least once a year. So I love that movie. and I'm not just saying that because Mark's your son. I watch it at least once a year. I love that one, Karate Kid and Best of the Best. I probably watch every year. So
Yeah. With Mark's film, like with Only the Strong,
yes.
A few years ago, we were sitting down and actually talking about it, because what they wanted to do was they wanted to do a follow-up on Only the Strong.
Really?
Yeah, and it's still going on. They're still trying to make the story stronger and actually film a lot of it in Brazil.
Okay.
And so, but we don't know. Right now, it's Mark is ending up with so many projects that that one is on the back burner for now. You see, and it'll come up because he still wants to do it. You know?
I hope so. Fingers crossed. I will definitely be the first one there watching it. So nice. All right,
thank you.
Final martial arts type question. Now this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've ever seen. Do you have a favorite movie fight scene? Is there one fight scene that just stands out?
Oh, one fight scene that stands out. I don't know. Now it's kind of prejudiced because I see what Mark can do.
Yeah.
You know,
well, hey, he's good.
He's got a lot of, what's it called? Bert Richardson,
Yep.
Also said that, Mark was the very, very best he's worked with, and it's an ideal, Mark would be the ideal person to work for any stunt director, because he can do anything.
Yeah.
And Mark, he can slip into any role. He's just so humble about it. So, when I see him doing things he's doing, he could do it. So it's no limit to what he can do on it, So, and, there are a lot of good people too, that they can do the martial arts. But because I trained him when he was a little boy all the way up to, getting that, I know what he can and cannot do. And that's why I say that. Yeah.
Hey, that's
he's
okay.
That's some good. Yeah.
Yes,
it's hard to say.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I understand where you're coming from. All right, my final question. This one has nothing to do with martial arts. It's just because I'm a fan. I'm just wondering, since you grew up in Hawaii, did you ever get into surfing? Oh
yeah, I surf. I still surf.
You do,
but nice. I'm not as good as Mark.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay.
Mark will do, like, he came several times, and I think I get upset a lot with him on that, because, he'll call me up and say, Dad, let's go for breakfast. I said, breakfast? Said, what are you talking about? I said, I thought you were up on the menu. He said, no, I've been in Hawaii. I said, how long you been in Hawaii? He said, 2 weeks. And I said, why you want to go breakfast? He said, well, because I'm leaving this afternoon. I said, so you call me to have breakfast when you're leaving in the afternoon and you've been here for 2 weeks. He says, I tell him, what have you been doing? He said, I've been surfing.
That's funny.
So,
I've never surfed. I grew up watching surfing as a kid. I remember when I was 10 years old in Minnesota, I subscribed to Surfer Magazine. And when I called them, they thought I was joking. They said, you're the only person in Minnesota that subscribes to Surfer Magazine. And I think I subscribed to it for like 5 years. And I used to watch every surf contest. At one point, I could name the top 10 surfers at any given time for like 3 years. Tommy Curran was one of my favorite surfers when I was a kid, and I still, if I see it on, I'll watch it. It's always been enjoyable, and I know a lot of surfers are involved in martial arts too.
Yeah. They got contests going on right now. I'm not sure. I mean, waves are going 20 to 30 feet high right now.
Yeah, I'd love to come out there sometime for the Pipeline Classic. Don't they still do that one or not?
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we were passing by. They had a guy that went down under. He hit the reef.
Ooh.
They had to go take him out. Yeah.
Ouch.
I said, wow. Yeah. Because when you get that tube coming in, it's beautiful to watch, man. These guys go right through it. It's like, whoa, awesome, man. And then they got Jaws on Maui.
Yep.
So it's pretty big too. So they got a really good waves here.
That's cool. And I actually found out about 20 years ago that they actually surf in Minnesota in Lake Superior, at one of the Great Lakes. But the only thing is, the only time there's waves there is in the winter. So they're surfing between October and March when it's like, below zero. They're out there in full thermal bodysuits with icicles hanging from their eyelids. I'm like, no, thank you. No, thank you.
What's the waves? How tall, how big are the waves there?
I've seen them get close to shore from pictures and videos I've seen them surfing easily 7 to 10 foot waves. I mean, you're talking, these are waves that take down ships during bad storms and stuff. So, I mean, when there's a storm, they'll go out there and surf. So, but I'd say average is probably 3 to 5 feet. So not huge. It's definitely not Hawaii waves, but
Hawaii waves. I think once you get inside, like a lot of tourists, they come, especially in Waikiki, and sometimes during the off months, not the winter months, and the waves get up to 10, 15 feet. They think they can take it. Boy, I tell you, they got more people getting rushed to emergency, boy.
Oh wow!
and they're getting rescued. Well, yeah, it's really awesome, though.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Mr. Dacascos, I just have to thank you so much. Like I said, I know how busy you are, and with the 5-hour time difference, it's kind of crazy to schedule these things, but I truly appreciate your time. It's been such a blast hearing your story. I can't wait to finish reading your book, and I really think the listeners are going to love this episode.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. And for the guys that are listening, we're talking about my book called Legacy. If you guys want it, they can get it on Amazon, or they can get in touch with Brian, and maybe we can have some people wanting to have a personal, private signature on it and so forth. So
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yep. And I'll put a link to the book when the episode comes out, and I'll put a link to your website and everything out there too. So.
All right, you're right. Okay, now you take care of yourself. You enjoy your cold. Right now, I'm just looking how beautiful the skies are out here. There's a good temperature. I'm walking around with shorts and tank top right now.
I'm jealous. I'm very jealous.
All right. You take care of yourself now.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Oh, you're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.